Hello and welcome to Browsing the Bible. I'm Scott Burgess. Today we're continuing our study of the book of Genesis. We are in Genesis 13. We have begun looking at the story of Abram's life. And we discussed the beginning there in chapter 12. We saw how God called him and he had him walk by faith and he didn't even know exactly where he was going. We saw many good points. We saw hints of the covenant that would be made with Abram. We also saw that he had a big blunder there with Pharaoh when he lied about his relationship to his wife, Sarai. Now here in 13, we get a look at the relationship between Abram and his nephew, Lot. And notice here in chapter 13, it says that there was a dispute that rose up because it turns out both Abram and Lot were very well off, had extensive herds, flocks, a lot of possessions. And it says that the land was not able to bear them. And so now, Abram takes a very noble step right here. And it says right here that Abram said unto Lot, this is in verse 8, "Let there be no strife, I pray thee, between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we be brethren," right here. That's very interesting that he would say that. Let there be no dispute between me, for we are brothers. Does that remind you of a story that we've already encountered earlier in the book of Genesis? It should. Remember Genesis chapter 4? The first brothers on earth, Cain and Abel. They went out into the field and they each made an offering unto the Lord, but the Lord only accepted Abel's because in addition to the grain offering, he gave the required burnt offering, and Abel did not. He gave only a thank offering, and boy, he grew envious, so mad that he wanted to kill his brother, and he did. But Abram's saying, let there be no dispute here. And by saying that we are brothers, we're going to have a chance for another brotherly conflict to surface, but we'll see how it can be handled in the right manner this time. Now, Abram also does something very unusual. Abram, of course, is the elder, but having some time to walk with the Lord and being mature in years, he takes a very high road here. He could have said, well, I tell you what, the land is big. We're just too close together. I tell you what, let's split the land. And I'm older, so as a sign of respect, I'll take the better part. But he didn't do that. As a humble man, he offers Lot the choice right here. In verse 9, he says, "Is not the whole land before thee? Separate yourself, I pray thee, from me. If thou wilt take the left hand, then I will go to the right. Or if thou depart to the right hand, then I will go to the left." He gives Lot, the younger one, the choice. That's very noble on Abram's part. But it also then gives a test to Lot. Now, Lot, the Bible later describes him in Hebrews 11 as a righteous man. But like Abram, that doesn't mean that every instant of his life was righteous. Being younger, and like so many people, we are selfish, he didn't take this to the Lord and say, Lord, what should I do here? I'm being given a choice. I'm permitted to choose the best part, but should I? Instead, it says here in verse 10 that then Lot lifted up his eyes and saw the entire vicinity of the Jordan, that all of it was well watered, like the garden of Yahweh, like the land of Egypt as you go to Zoar. Now that's interesting. Did you catch that? Lot lifted his eyes, and then he takes it all in, and he thinks, boy, that looks really good over there. Does that remind you of a story we've seen earlier in Genesis? It should. Remember Genesis 3? Genesis 3 verse 6. We read the sad account of how Eve engaged in talking with the serpent, which was a mistake from the very beginning. But it says here, when she listened to him, when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and a tree desired to make one wise, she took up the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband along with her, and he did eat. When we just let our eyes look upon something and we say, that looks good, we're going only on the impression. We're not saying, is it right? Is it the best? Is it pleasing? Is it more than permissible? Is it in fact morally right? Lot didn't do that. He just said, that looks good, and I'm going to take it. Because in verse 11, it says right here, then Lot chose for himself all the surrounding area of Jordan, and Lot journeyed east. That right there tells us the decision he made was bad. Remember, in the book of Genesis, eastward movement is always associated with rebellion, bad choices, just like Cain going east. So he chose for himself all that, and he pitched, toward eastward. Now, Lot dwelt in the cities of the surrounding area and set up camp towards Sodom. Now notice, he dwelt in the cities. Abram is going to live out in the country here, but he's going to go out and dwell in the cities. Who was the first city builder in the Bible? Well, it was that very rebellious son, Cain. He was the first one to build a city. And so now Lot is going to dwell in the cities of the surrounding area. Those cities included Sodom and Gomorrah, which were highly wicked right there. It even tells us in this chapter here that this story takes place before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah with the balls of fire that everyone knows about from heaven right there. So he goes and he's acting like Cain now. He's chosen what he wants. He's going toward the cities. He has an eastward movement. Nothing is going right here. But then it returns to the story of Abram right here, and the Lord is beginning to shed light on him, letting us know that Abram is a man who's really following with some missteps, yes, but the trend of his life is one that follows the Lord. Notice right here in verse 14, the Lord said unto Abram the following, and this is after Lot was separated from him, lift up now your eyes. Eve and Lot had lifted up their eyes on their own account, saw what was good, and decided to take it. But now notice the Lord himself is telling Abram, lift up your eyes, and look from the place where thou art, northward, southward, eastward, and westward. Look all around. For all the land which you see, to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. It's not that Abram lifts his eyes and decides to take it. God says, lift up your eyes, and I will give it. This again is a covenant promise. Genesis 15, it will be spelled out that the land is a huge part of God's covenant with Abram and his seed after him. And he goes right here in verse 16, and I will make thy seed as the dust of the earth. In other words, beyond count. That too is part of the covenant promise. As we go through the story with Abram and Isaac and Jacob, we will see that their seed is to be numerous. It's to be as the sand of the sea. Elsewhere it's described as the stars of heaven. It will be without count. This is part of the covenant promise. And then the last observation we'll make is this. God directs him, he says, arise, walk through the land in the length of it and in the breadth of it, for I will give it unto thee. You may remember we've looked a little bit at walking in the Bible. Enoch walked with God, and he was not, for God took him. And it says in Hebrews 11 that he had this testimony that he pleased God. He obviously had faith in him because it says that without faith it is impossible to please him. So God was pleased with the faith of Enoch who walked with him. Who else walked with him? Well, Noah walked with God. Well, evidently Noah was a righteous man. But also even Lucifer himself in Ezekiel 28, it says in verse 14 that he walked before his fall in heaven. He walked among the stones of fire there in the heavenly sanctuary. Right there at the base of God's throne, where the 10 Commandments are. That's the foundation of his throne. Lucifer's walking in full obedience to God prior to his fall. God himself would walk in the cool of the day with Adam and Eve, before they fell, of course. And so we found out that walking is associated with obedience in the Bible, and it's this way that they use walking, it refers to like walking back and forth. It's habitual. It's like they're continually walking with him. And now God is inviting Abram, walk with me. Walk all throughout it. Walk back and forth. And it should remind us of how God himself was walking in that garden sanctuary there on earth. God is preparing Abram to be somebody who will live the life that we are to live by faith in God's work in the heavenly sanctuary. And so from Abram, we can begin to learn that, yes, we too can learn to be walking faithful. If we've had a fall like Abram, something where we've disgraced God by lying about, say, our wife and saying she's our sister, whatever it might be, we don't need to be like that. God says, I can take you from that. I can cleanse you. I'll take you where you're at, but I'm going to cleanse you, and I'm going to enable you to walk in full obedience to my commandments. And hopefully, since we know the end of the world is right around the corner, maybe we'll have the privilege like Enoch of walking straight into heaven if our testimony pleases the Lord so. Until that time, I invite you to continue to browse your Bible and let us look forward to our studies more in the life of Abram when we get to Genesis 14. God bless you. Bye-bye.